I wasn't supposed to be on the bus that October morning. My history teacher had marked me absent after I'd fallen asleep during her lecture on the Civil War. But when I finally dragged myself to school, 20 minutes late and groggy from staying up playing video games, I slipped onto the yellow school bus just as it was pulling away from the curb. Nobody noticed me. The substitute teacher was too busy trying to control 30 restless 8th graders excited about their day trip to the nature preserve. The morning started innocently enough. We sang off-key versions of pop songs, played stupid games with candy wrappers, and speculated about what kind of snakes we might encounter on the hiking trails. I settled into a seat near the back, hoping to catch up on lost sleep. But as we drove deeper into the Appalachian foothills, something began to feel wrong. The regular driver kept glancing in the rearview mirror more frequently than normal, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. After 2 hours of winding mountain roads, we were supposed to arrive at Pine Creek Nature Reserve. Instead, the bus slowed to a crawl and turned down an unmarked dirt road. "This doesn't look right," someone muttered from the front seat. The trees grew thicker here, their branches forming a canopy so dense that even midday light struggled to penetrate. The substitute teacher, Ms. Henderson, stood up unsteadily as the bus rocked over ruts and potholes. "Mr. Thompson, are you sure this is the correct route?" The driver's response chilled us more than the dropping temperature inside the bus. "The GPS says we're exactly where we need to be," but when several students pulled out their phones to check their own maps, they discovered something impossible. Their GPS devices showed blank screens with error messages. Even stranger, when they tried to call their parents, every single phone displayed the same cryptic message: "Service unavailable in this temporal zone." We finally came to a stop in a clearing surrounded by massive oak trees that looked centuries old. In the center of the clearing stood an enormous Victorian mansion, its Gothic architecture so out of place in the middle of nowhere that it seemed to materialize from a different era. "Everyone off the bus," Mr. Thompson announced, his voice hollow and monotone, as if he were reading from a script. "We'll be spending our field trip exploring the Ravencroft estate." Ms. Henderson tried to protest. "This isn't on our itinerary. I need to call the school and confirm." But her words died in her throat when she saw the mansion's front door slowly creak open, though no one was visible on the other side. A gust of freezing air swept across the clearing, carrying with it the faint scent of decay and something else, something sweet and sickening that made our stomachs turn. I followed my classmates off the bus, my feet reluctant to touch the ground. The mansion loomed before us like a predator waiting to devour its prey. Its windows were dark rectangles that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As we approached the entrance, I noticed intricate patterns carved into the wooden door, symbols that made my eyes hurt. When I tried to focus on them directly, they seemed to shift and writhe just at the edge of my vision. Once inside, we found ourselves in a grand foyer with a double staircase that curved upward into shadows. Dust motes danced in the air, though there were no drafts to disturb them. The walls were covered with portraits of stern-faced people in old-fashioned clothing, their eyes following our movement with an intensity that defied explanation. "Please stay together," Miss Henderson said, though her voice quavered. "We'll take a guided tour of the first floor only." But as we moved through the rooms, I noticed something horrifying. Every mirror we passed reflected our images incorrectly. In one hallway mirror, I saw myself smile, though my face felt frozen in fear. In another, my reflection moved its hand to wave, while my own hands remained firmly at my sides. When I grabbed my friend Jake's arm to point this out, he looked at me with glazed eyes and said, "Everything's fine. This is educational." The turning point came when we reached the library. Thousands of books lined the walls. But when Sarah Chen pulled one from the shelf, she screamed and dropped it. The book had landed on the Persian carpet, its pages falling, open to reveal not text, but dozens of photographs, each one showing a group of students standing in front of the same mansion we were in now. Different decades, different eras of clothing, but always the same building. In the corners of each photograph were small handwritten dates: 1923, 1947, 1969, 1987. "What year is it?" I asked the others, suddenly uncertain. My phone still showed no signal, but the date display flickered erratically between different years. Jake picked up the dropped book and turned to the next page. We all crowded around to see what appeared to be a newspaper clipping from 1992, local school field trip results in 7 missing students. No clues found at Ravencroft Estate. The temperature in the room plummeted. Our breath became visible in the suddenly Arctic air. Ms. Henderson backed away from us slowly, her face transforming from concern to something else entirely. A twisted smile that belonged on someone else's face. "Children," she said, in a voice that layered multiple tones together. "The real lesson is about to begin." The lights went out. In the darkness, I heard 30 children breathing in perfect synchronization, except for my own ragged gasps. Somewhere in the house, an old phonograph crackled to life, playing a waltz that sounded submerged underwater. The music built to a crescendo, then abruptly stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard the distinct sound of someone counting. 1, 2, 3. The voice wasn't human. It sounded like metal scraping against stone. When my eyes adjusted to the moonlight filtering through the grimy windows, I realized with growing horror that my classmates were no longer beside me. The library was empty, except for me. Even more terrifying, the photographs in the dropped book had changed. Now, they included images of my entire class, standing in the exact same spots where various groups had posed throughout the decades. In each new photo, their eyes were black voids, and their smiles were too wide, showing teeth that were far too sharp. I ran from the library, calling out names that echoed back warped and distorted. The mansion's layout made no sense. Hallways led to rooms that couldn't possibly fit within the building's exterior dimensions. Staircases spiraled in impossible directions. Doors opened to reveal not rooms but other doors, creating an endless chain of thresholds to nowhere. In what might have been the dining room, I found evidence of other groups. Children's drawings were stuck to the walls with pins, crude sketches of stick figures standing in circles, of eyes watching from shadows, of something massive and tentacled reaching down from above. The drawings were dated, ranging from the 1920s to just last year. Each set included the same message in shaky handwriting. "We can't leave. It needs us to stay." That's when I heard it. The sound that had haunted my nightmares since childhood. It was the music box melody my grandmother used to play. The one that started innocently enough, but always ended with an off-key note that had terrified me as a child. The melody grew louder, coming from somewhere upstairs. Against all logic and self-preservation, I felt compelled to follow it. The stairs groaned under my weight, each step releasing tiny clouds of dust that spelled out words in the air. "Welcome home." The music came from behind a door at the end of a corridor lined with more photographs. These were different. Candid shots of families moving into the mansion throughout the years, their faces filled with hope and excitement. The same families appeared in later photos, their expressions blank, their eyes hollow, standing in the exact same poses as their predecessors. I pushed open the door to find my entire class standing in a circle, holding hands. They turned to look at me with perfect synchronization, their faces masks of unnatural calm. In the center of their circle sat an ornate music box, its lid open to reveal a tiny ballerina that spun eternally on a single toe. "We've been waiting for you," they said in unison. "The circle isn't complete without 8. My teacher stepped forward from the shadows. Miss Henderson's eyes were completely white now, her skin translucent, enough to see black veins pulsing beneath. "Every generation needs its guardians," she explained, gesturing to our circle. 7 students to maintain the balance, and 1 to find the next group. But this time, we have 8 of you. The room began to shift and distort. The walls breathed in and out like lungs. The floorboards rippled like water. My classmates' voices rose in a chant that sounded like Latin, but wasn't. The words scraped against my eardrums like sandpaper against metal. Through the chaos, I noticed something crucial. The music box ballerina was missing one leg, forcing her to spin erratically, off balance. "What happens to the 8th person?" I shouted over the rising din. Ms. Henderson smiled wider, her teeth now row upon row of needles. "The 8th person has a choice: complete the cycle or become the vessel for something far older than this mansion." The chandeliers above us began to swing violently, though there was no wind. Portraits slid off the walls, their painted eyes rolling to focus on me. The music box melody grew increasingly distorted, the notes stretching and warping until they sounded almost like screams. My classmates continued chanting, their bodies beginning to glow with an inner light that pulsed in time with their words, with their words. Through a window, I caught sight of our school bus. It was rusted and covered in vines, its yellow paint peeling to reveal gray metal underneath. Trees grew through its broken windows, and moss covered the seats. The bus had been here for decades, maybe longer. We were never supposed to leave. I ran again, this time with purpose. If I could find the way out of the mansion, maybe I could break whatever spell held my classmates. Or maybe I was already too late. The house fought against me. Hallways stretched longer with each step. Staircases rotated to prevent my progress, and doors slammed shut just before I could reach them. Behind me, I heard 8 people walking in perfect step, their footfalls matching the tick-tock of a cosmic clock. Finally, I found myself in a basement room I hadn't seen before. Ancient filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled with a year. Out of desperate curiosity, I pulled open the drawer marked with the current year. Inside was a folder containing detailed information about each of us, our birth dates, our fears, our most private thoughts. At the back of the folder was a school memorandum discussing the upcoming field trip to Pine Creek Nature Reserve. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. In the bottom of the drawer, I found a newspaper page already typeset and ready for printing. The headline read, "8 students disappear during school field trip. Ravencroft Estate claims another generation." The article was dated 3 days from now. We were already ghosts in the eyes of the world beyond these walls. A hand touched my shoulder. I spun around to find my best friend Marcus standing behind me. Unlike the others, his eyes still held recognition, still held fear. "I found something," he whispered urgently. "In the attic. There's a way out, but it requires a sacrifice." He led me up forgotten staircases to a room I was certain hadn't existed moments before. The attic was filled with artifacts from different time periods, clothes, toys, technology spanning generations. But in the center stood a grand piano, its surface covered with sheet music written in multiple hands across decades of time. "Look at the annotations," Marcus pointed out. Each piece had notes written in the margins, forming a message when read together. "The 8th must choose, 7 to stay, 1 to leave. But the one who leaves carries us all forward. The next generation will come. The cycle continues." The piano began to play by itself, the same off-key melody from the music box. Through gaps in the floorboards, I could see my classmates still standing in their circle below. Their chanting, now wordless, but somehow more powerful. The whole house vibrated with their voices. "I can help you escape," Marcus said, "but you have to promise something. You have to remember us. You have to make sure people know what really happened here." His form flickered slightly, as if he were a bad television signal. "I've been here before," he admitted. "Different face, different name, but I've stood where you stand now." The house shuddered violently. Dust rained from the ceiling, as the mansion itself seemed to scream in protest. The choice must be made. 1,000 voices spoke as one, all the children who had ever set foot in Ravencroft Estate. 7 to maintain, 1 to continue the hunt. I had seconds to decide. Through the attic window, I could see the outside world for the first time since we'd entered. The forest beyond the mansion's grounds looked normal again. No twisted trees, no unnatural shadows. Birds flew past the window. Real birds. If I could reach that world, maybe I could bring help. Maybe I could save my friends. But how could I live with leaving them behind? How could I face their parents, explain why I alone returned while their children remained trapped in a supernatural prison? The decision was torn from me when the floor suddenly gave way. I plummeted through rotting wood, falling past images of shocked faces from different decades, all sharing my expression of terror. I landed hard on the grand staircase, my ankle twisting painfully beneath me. Looking up, I saw Marcus at the attic window, his form now transparent. "Go!" he shouted. "Remember us." The house began to collapse inward, wooden beams and chunks of plaster raining down. I crawled and stumbled toward the front door, which now hung open like a mouth waiting to spit me back into the real world. Behind me, The chanting reached a fever pitch, 7 voices melding into one superhuman sound that shattered every window in the mansion. I threw myself through the doorway and into the clearing. The morning sun blinded me, the same morning sun that had watched us enter what felt like lifetimes ago. When my vision cleared, I turned back to look at the mansion. It was gone. In its place stood only foundation stones covered in decades of growth. Our school bus was exactly where we'd left it, the driver looking at his watch with mild annoyance. "Where have you been?" he asked me. "We're running late." I looked at the other seats. They were empty. All empty. "The others?" I gasped. "Where are the others?" He frowned. "What others?" "It's just us on this route today. You were supposed to be paired with that nice Henderson woman for the nature preserve trip, but she called in sick. Now hurry up. We're behind schedule." I stumbled onto the bus, my mind reeling. Had it all been a hallucination? But no. My ankle throbbed with real pain, and when I looked at my hands, they were filthy with dust that smelled like age and regret. As the bus pulled away, I saw something that confirmed the horrible truth. There, in the corner of my eye, stood the mansion, but only for me. The driver whistled as he drove past without noticing the impossible structure that had just disappeared. 7 of his regular passengers. In the following days, confusion reigned at Forest Hills Middle School. 7 students and 1 substitute teacher were simply missing, as if they had never existed outside of people's memories. Their desks gradually emptied as class sizes were adjusted. Their names were quietly removed from rosters. Even their parents seemed to forget them, though occasionally someone would mention feeling like they were missing something important. I tried to tell the truth. I filed police reports, spoke to concerned teachers, even reached out to paranormal investigators online, but without any evidence, and with the mansion invisible to everyone but me, my story was dismissed as trauma-induced fantasy or elaborate attention-seeking. After a while, even I began to doubt what had happened. That is, until I found the message in my locker 3 weeks later. It was written in Marcus's distinctive handwriting on aged paper that crumbled at the edges. The 8th returns for the 7th. The cycle continues. Come back on October 31st. Bring 7 more. I couldn't bring myself to go back. I changed schools instead, moved to another state with my aunt, but the mansion found me anyway. Every reflection showed me hints of its Gothic architecture. Every old music box played that distorted waltz. And worst of all, I began seeing other children with the same haunted look in their eyes. Children who had visited places that should have been abandoned, but instead were very much alive and hungry. Last week, I received an invitation in my mailbox, embossed on cream-colored paper, written in perfect calligraphy. You are cordially invited to attend the annual school field trip to Ravencroft Estate, October 31st, 8:12 a.m. 7 students required for educational enrichment. 1 guide essential for navigation. Your attendance is mandatory. I'm writing this account to leave behind as evidence. Tomorrow is October 31st. 7 students from my new school have already signed up for what they think is a special Halloween field trip to a nature preserve. The permission slips were filed last week, though I swear I never signed one. The old, yellow school bus arrived at my house this morning. The same driver at the wheel, checking his watch with mild annoyance. And as I sit here, I can hear the waltz playing from somewhere in the walls, the same off-key music box melody that still haunts my dreams. The mansion is calling, and this time, I know what it wants from me. I am to be the 8th, the one who shepherds the next generation of 7 into those cursed halls. The cycle must continue. If anyone reads this, please understand. Some field trips are meant to educate, others are meant to indoctrinate, and the difference is only clear when it's too late to turn back. The bus is here. 7 eager faces peer through its windows. They wave at me excitedly, unaware that they're waving goodbye to everything they've ever known. I must go with them. The mansion doesn't give you a choice twice, and maybe, just maybe, somewhere inside those ever-shifting rooms, my friends are still waiting to be saved. Or maybe I've already become what the mansion needed all along, the one who brings the next generation home.